Already. You're making me sound really rich.
One more thing. Her prominent blog, Baby on Board, has been entertaining tens of thousands of mothers since 2005, including me. And the last line of her bio reads, yeah, she's really busy, but you have to be if you want to afford Botox. Ha ha ha.
People are going to want to borrow money from me now. They're going to be like, we heard you on the podcast.
Right?
You're super successful.
Yes, you are.
No.
Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, guys. Hi, Laura. Hi, Scotty.
Hi, Stephanie. I happen to know a few things about your life.
Mm-hmm.
And could you just kind of tell us about like where you grew up and who you grew up with? You ran away from home at some point?
Well, let's see. I was born in New York.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and father, my father was like in show business. And so we moved to California when I was 2 for him to be an entertainer.
Right.
And then shortly after that, they got divorced. And then my mom remarried my stepfather. We lived out here, though, till I was about 12. Then we moved to a couple different places, Spokane, Washington, and Springfield, Massachusetts. My stepfather was a really, let's just say, a very difficult personality.
Right. You and he didn't get along.
We did not get along, not from the start.
Yeah.
I was just a little, basically angry, defensive,
Mm-hmm.
but funny kid.
Yeah.
So then I left Springfield. I didn't go to college. I just did not want to have anything more to do with school, my family. And I set out on my own at about 18, turning 19, and moved back to California.
And I feel like I'm remembering some story where there was like a home.
I went right when we moved to Springfield. My stepfather wasn't speaking to me. And this is kind of a long story, but I'll shorten it to say that they sent me to live at a runaway shelter. Because
that's what I'm remembering.
Yeah. So my stepfather didn't want me in the house, and my mom didn't really know what to do with me while they were looking for a house. She dropped me off in North Springfield at this runaway shelter.
Right.
And I lived there for probably 2 weeks with like prostitutes and kids who were drug addicts, kids who were actual runaways and needed a safe place to be. And I go in and I'm wearing, this is another only one in the room. So I had a couple weeks before, because I had stayed with my biological father and my stepmother, who was like in her 20s, and they'd taken me shopping at Fred Siegel. And I had these fancy clothes.
So Fred Siegel is a very fancy shop here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was wearing like these little culottes and a little sailor top, and I had super expensive sunglasses, all a gift from stepmother and the father. But these are like my clothes that I have. So I go to this runaway shelter and I just look like this spoiled bitch. And these people are like, who and what are you and why are you here? And we want nothing to do with you.
Right.
Meanwhile, my parents wanted nothing to do with me either. So I was like stuck with these people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at very best, that's not an average story for someone to have while they're growing up, especially when there are 2 parents at home. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you get beyond your childhood.
Yeah.
You meet your husband.
Yeah.
You meet your husband here in Los Angeles.
Here.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And you 2 get pregnant right away?
So no, we dated for a while.
Uh-huh.
We got married like 4 years after we met.
Okay.
So we moved in like 2 years later, and then another 2 years later got married. I got pregnant like right after we got married because I was like biological clock is ticking.
Mm-hmm.
I was 37.
How old were you? 37, yeah.
37 when I got pregnant. I think I was 38 when I had my older daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was smooth pregnancy, smooth delivery,
yeah,
all that?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, I was one of these weird people where I think I had a lot of anxiety, definitely already drank too much before. I mean, I already very much had a drinking problem, but I was single. I mean, there weren't a lot of consequences at that time.
Right. So why do you say it was a problem then?
Oh, because I would get drunk and embarrass myself, and then I did all the I'm never going to do that again, and then I would end up doing that again, swearing off all the time, making rules. I just used, when I say it was a problem because I did not drink like other people, and on some level, I definitely recognized that.
Yeah.
I mean, from early on, I had drinking blackouts at 14. Like, as soon as I started drinking, I think I might have blacked out my very first time drinking. And frequently had blackouts. I didn't know that was alcoholism. I just thought, well, yeah, that's what happens. Like,
right.
Wow, when you drink too much, you don't remember the next day.
Yeah. That's Scott's story. He had a blackout the first time. I don't want to tell your story, hon.
Well, that's all right, but I was determined to get it right the second time.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Which I didn't know was not normal either. Most people would black out and then probably wait a while. I went back 3 days later and tried to get it more right the second time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So-
I had lots of situations where I would drink way too much of a certain kind of alcohol. In my teens, we would get 100 proof schnapps, and then we would wash it down with grape soda. Shockingly, I would have horrible hangovers
Oh.
from that, right? But then you'd be so sick that I'd be like, I wouldn't be able to brush my teeth. I'd have to get a different flavor of toothpaste. It was like anything peppermint was disgusting.
Yeah.
But then I would be like, well, I'm never going to drink schnapps again. Or right? And then I would just try something different.
because that was the thing that was making you sick.
I'm
It
going to
was the
drink
schnapps.
amaretto. That's going to be a
Oh.
better bet.
Oh, I can't drink amaretto. Well, I can't drink anything now. Or I could, but I've chosen not to for 10 and a half years.
I definitely saw that my drinking could be problematic. But when I got pregnant, I had a weird reaction to pregnancy, as I did my second time too, which was that I felt so much better. After the first 9 weeks went by, I was like, oh my God, like, this is how normal people must feel all the time. I was like, I am not anxious. I feel really good. It's not bothering me that I can't drink. I feel very even keeled,
Mhm.
like very okay with change. I just had this sort of like cool, laid back attitude that I thought was just permanent.
Well, it's like a hormonal thing then, right? Like
right,
you
but
had
I
a
didn't know
balance.
it because I'd never been pregnant before. So I
Right.
was like, this is pretty cool. Like,
yeah.
I'm probably not an alcoholic for sure, you know?
And I think that I won't speak for all alcoholics, but for myself, whenever anything happens, I think this is the way it's going to always be. So if something's good, I think, oh, good. It's going to be good like this forever.
Yep.
And if something's bad, the same thing. So I'm sure that you were thinking, oh, something shifted. And here I
Right.
am in this new blissful state of balance and
Right.
serenity.
I was like, it must be all the work I've done on myself.
yeah.
Hardly any.
Right.
You know?
Okay,
I must be
yeah.
having a delayed reaction to therapy. It's
Mm.
working.
Finally.
This is great. Yeah. Then I have the baby and it just goes down the shitter like immediately. Immediately, I'm anxious, so anxious, more anxiety than I'd ever had. I mean, and I didn't recognize it as anxiety because I don't know why. You know, you have a baby and at that time, people didn't talk about it that much. And my feeling was, I love this baby, but I already hate this experience.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
like I felt primally like I want to take care of this child, but at the same time, I was like, this is way too much responsibility. And I was constantly in fear that she was going to die. Just every second of every day, I was like, does that mean something's wrong with her? And I remember laying on the bed with her. She was about like maybe 10 days old. And I'd read something that was like, this is how many breaths the baby should be taking a minute. And
Oh,
I remember
no.
laying on the bed next to her, counting her breaths and convinced that something was wrong with her.
Yeah.
I called the pediatrician once in the middle of the night and I was like, she's really tired. I said, I think she's lethargic. Maybe it was during the day. I did it like an emergency call. And the pediatrician called me back and he said, well, what are her symptoms? Like, is she peeing? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, is she eating? And I was like, well, she's been sleeping. So no, she's not really eating. And he's like, well, when was the last time she fed? And I said, whatever it was, 3 hours ago. And he was like, oh, okay. It was like, so what makes you think she's lethargic? I go, well, she's just sleeping. It's like, can't even wake her up. And he goes, maybe she's tired.
Right.
And I was like, what an asshole. Like, he doesn't understand anything. I was so mad.
Well, and that's partly just new mom stuff, right? Like, because when we're new moms, we just don't know.
Right.
But it sounds like maybe you're also dealing with some like postpartum because of the anxiety.
So I was.
Yeah.
And I was crying all the time. And my husband said, "You're really negative," and he doesn't really ever say anything unsupportive. He's not like that. So I took that really to heart. Like, oh, wow, he thinks I'm like negative. Oh, well, maybe you should go be with someone else who's a little more positive. I was always positive he was leaving me. It was a terrible, terrible time. I go to the OB and I say, I'm just crying all the time and I don't feel good. And he says, well, yeah, you had a baby. It's a big responsibility. That guy retired.
Yeah. So he doesn't prescribe anything for you, doesn't?
No. So he says, if it continues on for like another whatever, gets bad, come back and I'll prescribe you something. So it continued on. So like a couple, like, I don't know, 6 weeks later, I go back. I was like still crying every day. Same thing. It's really hard. And he's like, well, fine. Why don't I give you antidepressants?
Okay.
So he prescribes me, I want to say Lexapro, and I took it and I'd never taken an antidepressant before. And I went manic from it. The first one pill. And I was like, I felt good. This was within like the same day I'd taken it.
And that's really unusual because you're not supposed to feel the effects for weeks, right?
Right. So I had some kind of reaction to it.
Yeah.
And I went to this book club and I was talking to everybody and I called my mom. So I came home and it was like midnight and I called my mom. Well, who calls somebody at midnight? I called her and I was like, hey, what's up? I feel really good. I went on this medication and I feel great. And she's like, yeah, don't ever take it again.
Yeah. She knew that something
was wrong.
Yeah.
She's a psych nurse.
Oh.
She was like, you're having a reaction to the medication and don't take it. And I was like, so I didn't take it. Anyway, kind of adjusted, but I think in retrospect, I still had postpartum depression and it wasn't being dealt with. So cut to, and I'm really unhappy and I'm drinking a lot more.
I was just about to ask you about that.
So my drinking goes up. Now I'm starting to drink like every day just to take the edge off. Like, oh, well, this is something that reliably is making me feel a little, I don't want to say better, but a little number.
Yeah.
A little more like this is manageable. And as you were saying, if this is the way it's going to be, if this is my life now, then I got to figure out some way that I'm going to cope because I don't want to be a bad mom. I was drinking to be a good mom. I was like, I want to try to be present, but this all feels like so much that I need something to like take it down a notch, right?
Oh, yeah. So
I was like adding wine to spaghetti sauce.
That's what I was going to ask you. What did it look like?
I tried to make it a little like, convivial, like, oh, I'm making sauce. Look at me momming it up. I'm going to put a little wine in the sauce, a little glass for me, a little more in the sauce, and just serve spaghetti. And then my husband would come home and I'd pretend I hadn't started drinking without him. Right. And I'd be like, you ready to have some wine? Hey, honey, home from work. How about a drink? And then we'd share a bottle of wine. Then I'd take a Xanax, which I'd finally gotten prescribed. I'd finally gotten a psychiatrist. So now I'm on Zoloft. This is like when she's like a year and a half. On Zoloft, taking a Xanax, right? One in the morning, one at night before bed, as prescribed.
Right.
Hell yeah. With my alcohol, though, because wow, when you take one and then you have some drinks, that is even better. Also, like if I can find a Vicodin, yes, please. You got one left over from your C-section? I'll help you get rid of those. Oh, I was like, I might have to have some dental work done. And then at one point, I got prescribed, this was like 100 Vicodin.
Wow.
For migraines, for breakthrough pain, which I think the doctor thought would last like 2 years, right? That lasted like 4 days because I just kept taking them all day long. I was like, this is I see all the eyes in the room are like, wow, that's sad.
I'm not. That you're telling my story
Fuck
right
off.
now.
Yeah.
Well, and what I hear is the self-medication. Like you're learning how to treat your depression.
I thought everything was fine. I wasn't really thinking that this was a problem. I honestly thought I was coping.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was doing something so wrong because it's not like I was like drunk during the middle of the day. I didn't feel like I was putting my kid at risk. I was like taking the edge off at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking back with more clarity and honesty and having like worked a program of recovery, I can see that I was putting her at risk. I mean, I was doing things like starting to have a couple glasses of wine at 5 p.m. at a friend's house and then driving home. You know, at the time, I really did not think I was too drunk to drive or anything like that. But looking back, it was risky behavior.
Right. Right. And already there's dishonesty, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Because you had to be dishonest with your husband about how much you were drinking, because if he knew, then he might be like, hey, you started before I got home or whatever.
Right.
And then, you know, the 100 Vicodin, in order to take those, even just with yourself, you have to be dishonest
I was always
about the
worried
reasons why.
about
right?
people being caught.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think I had sort of a defensiveness of nobody understands what it feels like to be me.
Yeah.
Nobody understands how painful this is for me. And if I told them how this feels to me to be inside my head, they wouldn't understand and they would just think it's just no willpower. You know, I felt shame, but like I said, I felt like I was doing what I had to do to survive and people just didn't understand. And maybe there's something wrong with me that I'm not responding to motherhood the way other people do. And it felt like such a big embarrassing secret that the way I coped was to pretend it was kind of normal.
Right.
And just continue to do it.
Yeah.
At one point, though, my friend who ended up bringing me into recovery tried to have like a little intervention on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me so mad. Who is she? She doesn't even have kids. She has no idea what it's like to be a mom. Come talk to me after you've had a kid, you know?
What did she say to you during the intervention?
She said, I'm kind of worried about you. It feels like you're out of it a lot. Sometimes I call you and you're sort of slurry on the phone. And I was like, well, you know, sometimes you call me in the evening and I've had Xanax to like help me sleep. It's prescribed by my doctor.
Right, right. But your slip was showing and she was calling you on it.
I was messy.
Yeah. That's a good friend.
Yeah.
She's still your friend?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's my best friend.
Yeah.
But at the time and you know, the thing she did really right was she didn't argue with me about it. She was like, okay, well, I'm here if you need me, you know? So then I did let her this wasn't like immediately, but like maybe a couple weeks later, let's say it was Halloween, I had this incident happen where I went trick-or-treating with a mom friend and her kids. So our kids were like 2. And I ended up getting really drunk and bonding with the friend's mom. So the grandma of the kid who had come trick-or-treating with us became like my BFF on this. I don't remember, Laura, at all. I mean, I have a vague recollection of it, but the next day, my husband's like, wow, you and Shannon's mom really hit it off. And I was like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who? He's like, the mom. You guys were like best friends. You guys were exchanging contact information. And I was like, oh my God, this is not good. So no one really called me on it, but I was like, I think I need help. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to face my friend. Like, I don't know how I was acting. So I went to a meeting and I was all full of good intentions. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to quit drinking. I spoke. I was like, I don't want to be a drunk mom. I did not do any work of any kind. I was just like outed myself. And then I was like, you know what, though? I could do this on my own. Like, nobody really needs to know about this. Just keep it between me and me. So then I didn't drink for like 6 weeks. And then I got pregnant. And it was a pregnancy kind of from hell. And it was twins.
Right.
My twins that I have now. I did not have one drink through that entire pregnancy. Because the same thing happened to me where I was like, and I really thought it might have been the meeting that I went to. Right? I really did. I was like, okay, I've outed myself. I really made a commitment to not drink, and now I'm pregnant, and it was so easy for me to not drink, just like it had been with my first pregnancy, that after I had the babies, and it was a very stressful situation, and they were in the NICU because one of the twins hadn't been growing because where she implanted was over some scar tissue. So one of the twins was doing great the whole time. One of them was very small. I was on bed rest. I was in the hospital. I have the babies. They're in the NICU. It was somewhere while they were in the NICU that I thought it would be a great idea to drink again, because I was like, well, I think we've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that I don't have a problem.
Right. Now, how long were they in the NICU?
Like a month.
Yeah, okay.
One of them for 2 weeks and the other one for 4 weeks.
Okay. So somewhere in that, around that 2-week mark?
Maybe by the time I took the second one home.
Yeah.
I was also on a book deadline. I had a lot of pressure. I had one kid who was still a toddler, who was just turned 3, who had just started preschool.
Yeah.
I have these 2 twins that are having medical needs already. I have a book deadline that had already been pushed back because of the pregnancy. And I clearly didn't have a drinking problem.
Right.
None at
That
all.
you had been, or if you did, you had been relieved of it.
I'd been relieved of
Yeah.
it like magic.
Now, which book was this that you were on deadline with?
I think I was writing either I'm kind of a big deal or it's not me, it's you.
Okay, so Chardonnay's Not for Sippy Cups was out?
Oh,
You-
yeah, that
you-
was out. The follow-up book was out. I
Right.
wrote the follow-up book. I finished it while I was pregnant because there's a chapter in there about getting pregnant.
Okay.
So I start drinking again.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's going fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's going fine, Laura. Everything's good. Nothing to see here. I'm just having some drinks.
Right.
And that's when it was like got bad fast. That I went from, having a couple glasses of wine every day, it's kind of a problem, possibly a problem, to, wow, I can't stop drinking. Like, this is every day. I want to keep drinking into the evening. It's not working either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working well.
Right.
But I'm making a lot of rules for myself.
Yeah.
A lot of rules. Like, okay, I'm only going to drink Monday through Friday. Okay, I'm only going to drink Saturday, Sunday. Well, Friday too. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe Thursday.
Always Friday,
Maybe
too.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I had all these, and then I would promptly break them. But I had one rule that was like a line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I will not, whatever I do, I'm not going to drink and drive. Because
Right. You have 3 kids.
I have 3 kids. I've got babies. They're vulnerable, like, so, okay. Then I realized, well, this whole drinking this time and drinking that's not working. So what I'm going to do, this is my big idea. I'm going to just be a drinker. Like all my friends are. I'm going to be a drinker.
Right.
And I'm just going to accept that that's kind of cool. Listen, I'm a writer. I'm kind of a creative person. I got baggage. I'm just going to be someone who drinks. What's the big deal as long as I'm safe?
Right.
Drink after they go to bed. I'll drink at home. Have my wine to my heart's content. Try not to drink more than like 3 or 4 glasses, but that's what I do. Who cares? What's everybody's problem with that?
Right.
And my husband wasn't having a problem with it, really. So I did that.
Your husband was at a job during the day?
He worked a lot of hours.
Yeah.
He didn't, but I mean, he was worried. He thought I was very stressed. So he was very understanding. He was like, well, God, you do have a lot of baggage from your past and you do have anxiety and you are being seen by a doctor. So he trusted me, So then one night, shortly after I decided to just be a drinker, I went to a play date with these other moms, and there were nannies and they were watching the kids, and I had a martini, and I don't usually drink like martinis. And I was like, this is great. This is so sophisticated. I'm having so much fun. The kids are being watched. I'm finally getting a break. I feel really good. Meanwhile, my husband's trying to text me or call me, and I'm like, fuck you. I've got 2 of the kids with me. You only have 1. Your life is easy. Stop. Get off my back. Stop asking where I am. Right? I'm in that mode. Continue drinking. Have a couple more. And then my friend, he calls my friend's phone looking for me. So my friend's like, John's like, he's really wondering where you are. And I was like, all right.
You were supposed to have been home.
I
at this
guess.
point? Yeah.
I don't know. maybe check in. Maybe he's worried about me. I don't know.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go home. You know, he can have 3 kids at home instead of he should be enjoying the fact that he has 1. I get in the car, strap the kids in. The mom's like, are you sure you're okay? Yes, I'm fine. I probably had like half a martini for the road, you know, just because I know he's not going to be pouring me martinis when I get home.
Right. Well, so how much do you think you've had to drink at this point?
Honestly, probably only like 3 drinks, but
Right.
strong martinis.
Yeah.
And you have to also, I'm kind of skinny at this point. I'd like been on Zoloft for a while and it made me lose weight. So I'm kind of skinny and you know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't hold a lot of liquor. And I'm also, you got to understand on an antidepressant, I think that makes a difference. And I'm taking Xanax.
Right. And women do not metabolize alcohol the same way that
Right.
men do. So whatever we drink stays in our system.
Right.
It's slower to metabolize. We're likely to blow higher than a man who's had the same amount of drinks as us.
Right.
Blow meaning in the DUI
Yeah, no.
test.
Yeah. So in my mind, though, I'm like, I haven't had that many drinks.
Right.
I'm fine. And also, I have this thing. I don't know. I don't know how many other alkies have this, but I always think I'm good to drive. Like, I always feel fine. I mean, now look, I'm not the same with pot. Back in the day when I would smoke pot, if I would be a little bit high, I'd be like, oh God, no, I can't drive.
Right.
Like, I don't even know which, I don't even know which way is like, but drinking, I'm like, I feel fine, very much in control. So I get in the car, I go home. It's like a 7-minute drive. Now my husband's furious because he's been trying to call me and I've been blowing him off. So he meets me in the driveway and I get out of the car and apparently stumbling, like, and he's like, oh my God, like you are drunk.
Right.
Like you're stumbling. You can't even walk. He was furious and he's not a guy who gets furious.
When he was scared, I'm sure.
He was scared.
Yeah.
He was really mad. So what are you supposed to do besides get mad back, right? So I'm like, how dare you? You're so controlling. Like, I'm fine. How dare you? I had 2 of the kids with me. Sleep on the couch. I'll show you. Like, you know. So I wake up in the morning. I'm so hungover.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was going to die. And of course, I don't know. I had this like, I was like, if I'm this hungover, obviously I was drunk,
Right.
you know? And then I just had this moment. I'll never forget. I was like laying on my couch and I said, I could go in to my husband and I could say, honey, I'm so sorry. Like that was an accident. I was drinking hard liquor. I'm not used to it. I didn't gauge
Right.
it right.
Make excuses.
I could make excuses and I think he would believe me. But I was 42 years old and I was like, this has only gotten worse. I mean, this all came into my head at once through a blinding headache, nauseous, puking. I was like, I know it's going to happen again. I know it's going to happen again. And then what's going to happen the next time?
Right.
Like I just gambled like with my kids' lives.
Yeah.
I just gambled everything for what? So that I could have a couple of drinks at someone's house. Like I was like, people that don't have a drinking problem don't do that. I had a moment of like, I obviously have a problem. And so I went to my husband and I said, I have a problem. And I want to tell you that that I would just never do it again, but I have to get help because I will do it again and I will have the best intentions, but it's going to happen again because I think I have a problem.
Wow.
Then I called my friend, my BFF, and I was like, I need help because I can't stop drinking.
The friend who performed the intervention, who said she'd
who took
wait
me
for
to the
you.
meeting the first time.
Yeah.
She waited for me.
Yeah.
So this was like a year and a half, 2 years later.
Okay.
2 years later. Yeah, the twins were 18 months old at that time. So, I mean, so it was a few years later because I stopped drinking on my own right before I got pregnant.
Right.
But from the time they were born to the time I got sober was another 18 months. Yeah. She took me to a meeting. And
were you scared at this point?
Oh my God. Well, I was really sad. I was really embarrassed. And now you have to remember that I'd written a book called Sippy Cups Are Not for Chardonnay that was sold a lot of copies. And I hung out with a bunch of parents that loved to drink. And I oftentimes would have conversations with them where I would say, like, we don't drink too much, do we? And they'd be like, no, hell no. We all do this. And it was like a secrecy, but like, this is how we cope. I didn't know any sober moms. Mm-hmm. I had no friends and so I was like, I might do it more than they do. I'm not sure, but I took comfort in the fact that, like, I guess this is just what we all do. So now I've quit drinking. I have a blog where I talk about drinking and I'm funny and I'm like a smartass. And now I don't really know what to do because I feel like I make a living off of being like funny and honest. So really only like 10 days after quitting drinking, but I was very serious. I know you're not supposed to say never again, but I was like, I have to get sober. Like, I have to. I don't have another try in me.
You just knew that.
I just knew. I was like, this has to be the end. Whatever it takes, like whatever it takes. I cannot drink again because I'm not safe around alcohol. So I had that going into it. I was willing to go to any length to make it work. But now I also had this problem of like, if I'm going to write, I've got to tell the truth. So I wrote on a blog that I quit drinking and I was really scared. And I called a couple friends first that were like blogging friends. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm really scared there's going to be a lot of backlash. And they were like, well, we support you. I think you're being brave. So I write this blog post and I get all this really nice feedback. Like all these people are like, you're going to love being sober. I'm a sober mom. You're going to love it on the other side. And a lot of people that are like, wow, I think I might have a problem too. All this. Mm-hmm. But then, and I don't know if you know this part of my story, but right after that, the mommy blogger for the New York Times, she wrote this column called Motherload, and it was a very popular column. Somehow, even though my blog wasn't a big blog, she got wind. Somebody sent it to her. I don't know what. And she wrote a column about me in the New York Times. And she outed me, basically. Even though I guess it's not really outing if I said it on my own blog. But suddenly, like a million people knew this. And I started getting calls and emails from like Dr. Phil and like all these shows. And I was like, why? How do people know this? I felt horrible, so exposed and embarrassed, and like they all wanted to do a story on me. And I was like, I quit drinking 10 days ago. Wow. I have nothing to say about being sober. I have no idea what I'm doing, no. And it was really awful, and then of course all these people were making comments to that blog saying, oh, her kid should be taken away and like how disgusting and what a horrible mom. And like if she didn't want to have kids, she shouldn't have had kids. And like just the most ruthless.
Well, yeah. And you have been kind of the rep for the mom wine scene.
Right.
Like literally you had written the book.
Right.
And so now you were putting your toe in the water about coming out as sober.
Right.
And now you've been made the rep again by this article in the Times.
Right. So I refused to be the rep. I
Yeah.
was like, don't talk to me. I have 10 days of sobriety. I know nothing.
Yeah.
But then my publishing company was like, look, you got to say something, So they got a call from somebody at the New York Times who wanted to do an article on me. And this was maybe 4 months into my sobriety. And this was around the time that Diane Schuler crashed her car.
Yes.
So this was like this secret mommy drinking became a huge story.
Right.
And the New York Times really wanted to interview me. And I was like, okay, I have 4 months. I'll do an interview, but I'm just going to tell the truth. Like I'm nobody's like, you know what I mean? I'm nobody's rep about how to do this. So I got interviewed. I kind of told my story to her a little bit, and it was a really nice, fair article. Mm-hmm. And I got so many letters and so many emails. I mean, hundreds a day from moms that were like, oh my God, I think I'm an alcoholic too. Mm-hmm. Can you help me? you know?
Yeah.
So I made this thing on my blog and I called it Don't Get Drunk Fridays on my blog. And I was like, because I felt like I was talking about sobriety or quitting drinking too much. So every Friday I had somebody tell their story. Didn't you do it once?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all these comments would happen. And I was like, look, you guys go have a Yahoo group.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do feel like now looking back, I feel like doing those interviews, it felt horrible at the time, but actually gave me some accountability. You would think it would put me in a more vulnerable situation, but it didn't, because it almost made it like me more proud of being sober. And like, if I go back to drinking, it was like a little inflated view of how many people knew, but you know what I mean? I was like, if I go back to drinking, everyone's going to know.
Right.
So I might as well just like tough it out and like stay the path. And then so I have.
And how long has it been that you've been sober?
It'll be 10 years in May 22nd.
Wow.
Yeah. Similar to you, similar to Scotty.
Double digits.
Yeah. That's amazing. I don't know if it's amazing. It's really interesting to me that you put yourself in the public eye. You're funny is, you're funny. You're funny, you're a great writer. You put yourself in the public eye, and then this thing happens in your life, and it's like this undercurrent at first, right? Where it's kind of like it's moving, and you're like, okay, this is a little out of control. I need to get it under control so I can keep doing my life, being mom, being wife, being author, being front woman for this movement or for this culture. And then the grace with which you were able to kind of reset yourself and be funny and be creative and take a position that you didn't ask for, and being a spokesperson, but not really, but someone who speaks about the sober mom culture as opposed to the wine mom culture and what that's like. And that makes it okay. Just like it made it okay for people to drink and have that kind of culture around their kids, because before that wasn't okay. Right.
Well, I do feel like I've always been such a people pleaser and wanting to fake it, to look, I don't want to say to look better than I am, but to show that I have it all together. So one thing that getting sober really taught me is like, I just don't know, but that if I'm honest, that's the thing that people like. It's not the, oh, she's a funny mom and it's not the bravado. It's the telling on myself, which I do kind of naturally anyway.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I'm kind of an open book anyway. So once I realized like, oh, yes, some people are going to hate me and judge me, but they were already, those same people were doing that when I was drinking.
Right.
Just for me saying like, oh, whatever it was about parenting, they'd be like, oh, she sounds like a terrible mom.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to be like, wow, that's so gross that you were an alcoholic. What a horrible mom. Okay. Well, but for each person that's like that, it's like there's 10 more that are like, thank you for saying that.
At least.
Just, I mean, hearing you be honest, you always think you're the only one. I mean, that's the point of this podcast. Like most people think that they have a secret that nobody else knows or could understand.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody who understands.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I'm just kind of a little fascinated with the idea that you thought you were going to lose your ability to be funny and fun.
Oh, yeah.
And that you haven't.
The first time a group of moms didn't invite me over for an outing.
Right.
And it turned out that it was, in fact, I was worried it was because I was sober. And it turns out it was exactly because I'm sober. They were worried. She said, well, I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
I was like, no, you didn't want to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You didn't want to feel uncomfortable because you wanted to drink and you didn't want this sober. And it really hit some insecurities that I had of like, oh, am I boring now? Am I like do they think I'm like this pious, Amish woman in the corner poo-pooing their activities?
A teetotaler.
Yeah, yes. And I was like, no, I'm fun.
Yeah.
Seriously, I was you, not that long ago, a couple years ago. I'd drink all you bitches under the table.
Right.
I was really bad. I would throw up. Like,
yeah, peppermint schnapps and grape soda.
I stopped wanting to be I stopped wanting to belong to that little club.
Well, and I think there's part of that's just being an adult. Not entirely, because there are a lot of adults who do drink like that and have that culture. But I think there are people who grow up and that doesn't become as important. The things that we get to do more as sober people become more important. And,
Right.
To spend time and be present instead of removed is a really big deal if you can access that.
Well, also, there's the thing that whatever you're doing, you assume everyone else is too. And the truth is that a lot of moms were not drinking the way I drank.
Right.
A lot of them were and have a problem, right? But there were plenty of moms who were into the whole yeah, let's bring wine, and then they'd have a half a glass and be like, I'm good, I'm driving.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to go into the second part of the pod, which is called Dear Laura.
Okay.
And it started because all the messages and direct messages and emails I got after the piece ran in the Huffington Post about my being the only Black person
I
at
love
the Brave
that
Magic
piece
Retreat.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
God, you're the best writer.
Oh, well, I mean, I had the best teacher.
Oh, you are already a good writer.
Thank you. This one says, Dear Laura, my name is Jane. I'm a mom of 3, yet my middle child died during labor. I feel lonely in his absence and when I see sibling groups of 3, but also when I hear moms telling their birth stories of their living children. And that's all she says. She doesn't ask us a question, but she's very clear about the isolation of what that feels like. And I chose this one for you. And there are a couple reasons why, but I mean, starting with the fact that you had, your twins in the NICU for that time. And so that was a different birth story than probably your peers, right?
And that's got to be so hard for her because she probably feels like, she doesn't want to be that person that's constantly bringing it up,
right?
Or being awkward and being like, oh, when people say how many kids do you have, she probably wants to say 3, but one of them died during labor. I mean, she knows she can't do that, but she always has that nagging feeling of I want to tell people.
And is it dishonoring to my other child if I don't count her middle child, if she doesn't say that she had 3 children?
But even if she says well, I have 2 living children, then of course someone's
yeah.
I mean, I relate in the way of that when my daughter, the smaller twin, had a lot of medical stuff, and I just remember at one point realizing it's just never going to be the same path for me, in the way that there's just a lot of unknown. And when other moms are talking about oh, how old was yours when they said the first word? My daughter didn't say a word at 18 months. She had a ton of therapy. At 18 months, she had speech therapy because she didn't have really words.
Okay.
So I just remember always feeling out of the conversation.
Yeah.
If people were well, what? Oh, is your kid start walking? And
yeah,
I would try to make jokes and be no, she doesn't walk, but she's totally reading.
Right. Well, and it's you don't want to bring the conversation down.
Right.
Because I had children who needed educational tutors and, different after school times. One needed an assistant during classroom time. And to compare my situation to other ones was just kind of a downer.
Right.
If we were all, around sitting having breakfast after drop off, I didn't want to always bring my stuff up.
Yeah, I get it.
Right.
And it is weird because my older daughter has had a totally different path. She's very high achieving. And so I don't want to compare my kids to each other either. So I guess I sympathize. I can't, it's a tough situation and you just have to go, you're not the only one this has happened to.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds so trite, but finding a support group, either a Facebook group of people who have lost a child during labor, I know they exist because I know there are plenty of moms who want to talk about it.
Yeah. And then the second reason I thought you could identify is because you had 3 girls. And now you have 2 girls and a boy.
Sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is also a different story than your friends, most of your friends, I would imagine.
By the time my son Xander transitioned to be my son Xander, I was I have so many only person in the room things, come at me.
Yeah.
What else you got, God?
You are brilliant on social media about it. When people have comments that skew negative, the way you come back and confront them and set them straight is just beautiful.
Well, having a kid who's transgender, I will tell you really quickly, is a lot like anything else. You can't know what it feels like unless you've been through it. So anybody who has an opinion about it, I would say it's very easy to have an opinion about how someone else should raise their child, about what's going on, about how young is too young to know what your gender is. Well, when you have a child, nobody wants their kids to be transgender. I don't know who these people are out there who are like, what, are you just trying to encourage your kid?
Right.
Yeah, because I want my kid to be a freak that gets made fun of and has a terribly difficult life and can't live in any other state besides California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Let me just try to encourage No, the only way that happens is if this is who your kid is and they tell you over and over and over and they're sad and unhappy and you're thinking, what's wrong with my kid? Maybe they have clinical depression. I need to get my kid a psychiatrist. And then they tell you, no, I'm a boy. And you go, oh my God, okay. Well, what do you want me to do? Well, please call me he. Okay. And then you do it and you see your kid light up and then you get their haircut and then that's all it is. Like letting your kid be who they are. It becomes very clear. I can tell you that my husband was not on board with, he couldn't even say he for a while. He would just say, hey, buddy. Like, and then as soon as he realized that when I honor my child's who my child is by using the correct pronoun, the face lights up. And
yeah,
that
was actually one of my favorite pictures that you posted was Xander's first haircut as Xander, like the haircut that he had wanted and the smile on his face.
Oh yeah,
that's
he
everything.
Was like lit up, like he was like a light bright, like he was just like, I'd never seen him smile that hard. I mean, really, he was a kid who just walked around with like in all boy clothes with like a really shaggy, he just looked like a surfer dude. He got misgendered when he was a girl, not that he was ever a girl, but when he was living as a girl but dressed as a boy, people always said he to him.
Right.
And I would notice that he loved it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he would not correct anybody. And if I corrected people, he'd seem a little bit bummed out. And I remember the first time I didn't correct the person, they were like, excuse me, like young man or whatever in the grocery store. And I didn't say anything. And I saw him just like kind of smile. So when it came time to change the pronouns, I asked him one time, I was like, you hated it when I told people you were a girl, right? And he goes, yes, because I'm not a girl. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been hard.
Well, and I think that might be helpful for Jane to just know that that other people have challenges about how to tell the story of their children.
Right.
And their families and their lives, and this is what it looks like, without feeling like they're asking for sympathy or they're playing the victim. It's just their story.
Oh, yeah. I would say to Jane that I always have a little hesitation for a second every time somebody says, oh, you have 3 kids. Oh, boys, girls. And I say, oh, I have 2 girls and a boy. And I always feel slightly dishonest, even though that is the truth. But there is this part of me that wants to tell them, like I'm sure Jane does, like, well, I originally had 3 girls, but one of them is now living as a boy. Like, right, but then I go, they don't need all that, so just tell them what is.
Yeah. Beautiful. So I want to tell people where they can find you on social media, because I know that your podcast is going on, For Crying Out Loud, which is really, really funny. You're hilarious.
Oh, have you listened to it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I'm sorry. Where can people find you?
Oh, S. Wilder Taylor is the Twitter. And then For Crying Out Loud, it's on iTunes.
Yeah.
You can download that.
Twice weekly.
Twice, Tuesdays and Fridays.
Tuesdays and Fridays.
Out. Yeah.
Wow.
And then if you join the Patreon on that, you can get the juicier bonus content. But see if you like it first, you know?
They'll like it.
See if it's your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Oh, I do a podcast really quick for anybody that watches The Bachelor. Oh. I do a podcast called Rose Pricks, which is just really funny because I do it with a super funny guy named Ronnie Karam.
Oh, that's great.
And we make fun of The Bachelor. And so when The Bachelorette starts back up,
you guys will be back
Rose
up.
Pricks. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So thank you. Thank you for coming and being the only one in the room. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and stay tuned for our bonus after show, Scott Talks, coming up next.